totally different place. So it could be a little bit fun, but the reason is we're going to spend a lot of time at the bench today. I want to say hello to people, so I got to look over here to do that, and so I'll be switching stuff around. But I think it'll be a lot of fun because I'm going to show you how I do scratch building. And it's when I say scratch building, what I really mean is scratch building and kit bashing because I do both at the same time. And I do a fair amount of it. And I really enjoy it because it's super creative. And there's just a couple of things, a couple of maybe principles or whatever. I didn't even finish them in my presentation to like have them written down, but I just want to give them to you, just like I do in my coaching classes. You know, it's more of a conversation. So I do want to go over here. I'm going to switch this to that, and then I am going to see if I can say hello to some folks in our chat, in our comments. Jordy Models is here. Hi, Will. How's it going? Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate you coming by. So the top down, I've got that going as well. Scott is here. Thanks very much, Scott. I'm waving to you because I'm at the top down. But thanks very much for stopping in. And thank you, Scott. He's always like, hey, make sure you subscribe and stuff. So thanks for reminding me, Scott. So the first thing I want to do in showing you this, I'm going to go to the top down real quick, is I want to show you a little bit about, what I mean by scratch building and kit bashing because, the different materials that I use are all common to all of us. And so I want to just kind of base it in that. And then I'm going to show you a lot of this kind of stuff. I want to show you some of the things that I've built. So we'll come over here. I got to switch my camera there. This is all in support of my Hand of Godzilla diorama because, and we're going to come back to this real quick, because I did a lot of scratch building in this diorama, and this is a couple of years old, if not 3 years old. This is my Wolfenstein diorama. And in there's this, I think, is a great example of scratch building. Most of all of this is scratch built, except if you follow to the left of the picture, you see where the cable comes down, there's that little motor right there. Well, there's parts of it that were, cobbled or kit bashed, but that's pretty much it for this whole thing. And so this little lift and this little lift here, I built for the top of the Wolfenstein diorama. And you see the doors on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you can see how it's configured in the model where this lift is like lifting things up and out of that doorway. The doorway also completely scratch built. And then this is like a table and that's like some, I think I used tissue paper, but that's a parachute. And this is for my friend Ray. We were in the 82nd together. This is all scratch built. This is supposed to be like a parachute that's being packed and rigged for a jump. Right behind him there is the coffin. It's a sarcophagus that was hand carved. Again, all scratch built. But then as you start looking closer, look at the lid of the sarcophagus in there. Those are little weapons. Those are technically kit bash because I'm taking those little weapons from kits. And then here's kind of a completion of the scene. So you've got the two riggers that are there, putting the parachute rigging together for packing it onto that sarcophagus. And then behind it, you can see the lift and even the door. That's kind of the top configuration of that. So most of that was scratch built, but then a lot of it was kit bashed. Here's another one. This is all scratch built, but there are elements that I'm pulling in from other kits. Now, if you're I'll come back here. If you're into like video games and stuff like that, you'll probably recognize this because what this is like in some games like Call of Duty and stuff like that, an alarm will go up. And that alarm is that little tank, and it's got air tanks, and it's these air horns. And if you don't shut that down, then it like tells other people to come run into that position. And so in the game, you have to go ahead and, shut this thing down. So making little things like that, number one, it's fun to imagine it and build it, but it's also going to bring somebody in. And I don't think there's anybody that makes a kit for that. So it's something that you're building that's going to bring somebody in because they're going to recognize that from gaming. But it's kit bashed and scratch built. So it just kind of goes with the whole idea of trying to create something interesting in your model, because you can't necessarily find a kit for it. You can't, or don't have the capacity or maybe the want to learn how to do 3D imaging and 3D modeling so you can have an STL made of it, or pay somebody else to do it. So you can still kit bash and you can still scratch build a lot of this stuff. Most of this stuff was in all my dioramas is done this way. And I find that very fun. I find it extremely engaging. You got to really think of stuff. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I do in kit bashing and scratch building that make it a little easier. And hopefully that's going to help you to try it. Or if you do it, heck, give me your comments. I want to see how you would do something, or how you would use a material, or maybe in some of the tools or materials that you use, because we're going to talk about that too. So I want to say hello. Steven is here. Hello, Steven. Thanks very much for saying hello and coming in. As I said, I've got my cameras funky today because we're going to actually be building at the bench. And let me go to the top down. Now, one thing about my top down is it'll go for, I don't know, 20 minutes. And then it'll shut down. So I've just got to turn this camera on and off. So it'll go blank at one point. It won't lose my voice or anything like that. I won't lose you on the live stream. It'll just happen. So let's start like this. I have a box. And you can see some of the stuff just laid out here because I pulled them out. I think I'm going to use some of these things. But I have a box, and this is my box. These are all just old leftover pieces and parts from kits. And I mean, there's even this came off of a birthday cake or something. I don't know. And what this is this is my, it's not really a spares box, but it's really where I want to go to for parts. And I think that's a really important thing about how I view this. So I was in manufacturing for many years. I did it both manually, manufacturing, building things. I was on the assembly line. But there was also a long stretch, a long period of my professional career where I worked in software for manufacturing. So I got to understand subassemblies and parts and building up something, to make like a truck. You have a truck bed, you have the cab, you have the engine, you have the chassis, you have the frame, you have all these different things, and they can be considered as individual components or subassemblies. And that's a real neat key to think about things when you're trying to build them from scratch. So here's what I do. I take these, and I'll go back to my little box here. I take these and I have all this in here, and then what I'll do for each project that I'm going to start is I'll take something like this. Now this is a developing tray, and so they're really easy to find, and they're very inexpensive. Even used, certainly used, because they're for like photographic developing. But I'll start by gathering parts out of that box. But I've also, and then I'll put them in here, and those will be the primary things that I go to build from, okay? But I've also taken and sorted out certain things, like these are just tiny, tiny parts. And when you're building in 1/35th scale, these little teeny tiny parts are brilliant. Let's go back to my slides real quick because I want to show you some of that. Let's do that. No, that. So in my slides here, These are some of the things that I built for the Wolfenstein diorama. And if you look here a little bit wider shot, all these little pieces, all those little parts came from other parts, from other model kits, from this spares box. And I built them and I put them together to look like what I wanted to create. Here's another room in Wolfenstein. That is a 3D printed skeleton and a 3D printed skull, but the rest of it is pretty much scratch built, right? From just regular stuff. This is another place where I've used a 3D skeleton and I put little wrappings and stuff on him to make it look like a mummy that's being unwrapped. But I built the table out of just styrene. This it might be a little bit hard to see, but what it is a lift. And I'll try to show you here. It's like this little, it's like a lift like that. It goes up and down. It's an ordnance lift. So let's cut back in here. I think there's another, nope, there's not another picture of it. But it's for building ordnance. So it's completely scratch built. This, I was doing medical kind of equipment. I may even build another one of these completely scratch built. But then when you start putting this stuff together, this is the thing that I think, you have to kind of keep in mind all the time, which is you're really trying to make a cohesive look, or you're trying to make the things that you build look like they're used in a certain way. And that's one of the first keys that we think about. When I'm starting to look at the things that I'm going to build, I want to think about, what does it do? Because if there's a machine there, it's going to do one or two or three or four things, right? You don't have to get into the specifics of what it does, but a machine is going to be reading something, right? Monitoring something. It's going to be outputting something. It's going to be processing something. It can be, taking something like a suction device. You know what I mean? So think of it in those terms, like whatever I'm building, and let's look at these pictures again. Whatever I'm building, I'm sorry, that's just the file cabinet, the scratch-built file cabinet. But this right here, this was a very complex little thing, and it's all kit bashed, but it's also partially scratch-built, and it's supposed to be this bed, almost like in Captain America, the first Captain America, where he goes into the chamber and it makes him all strong and stuff like that. Well, that's what this is. That's kind of what I'm ripping off. Well, to build that, I'm just putting all this stuff, and but it looks like what I'm describing, right? I mean, it looks like it does something. Over on the right-hand side, with the chair sitting there, that makes it look like a control, right? Or a monitor, something like that. Because the guy's laying in this thing and it's holding him, I think I getting the point across. It should look like it's in the environment, number one. It shouldn't look out of place. It should look like it's doing something, performing some task. Just setting stuff in the background isn't what you're looking to do. You're not just building shapes. Think of it as you're building something that will perform an actual thing, or it'll perform a kind of a task. You know what I mean? It's lighting, like a real light. It's a laser beam, and it's got, and then think of this too. And that's part of what we're going to build today. When I put a machine or a component or something that I've built in there, how's it powered? It's perfect in this kind of an environment because it's modern enough that there's going to be electrical cables coming to it. My last diorama, it was a really difficult thing because if I tried to put a light in something, I had to hide the wire. In this, I want to expose the wires. If there's wires coming to a component, great. Make it look like it's the actual wires coming to the actual component that's making it light up or getting the power to it to perform its function. I've also used electrical wires to look like they're not electrical wires, but hoses. that are actually, moving liquid or gas or something like that. When in fact, it's just bringing the electrical into the little tiny component that I've built to give it some light so it looks cool, right? Okay, so back to some of these pictures and we're going to get into building. So, see what I'm saying? You're trying to make it look like it's doing something. Here, I'm trying to build some doors. These are completely scratch built. And then you see the handles. Those handles are kit bashed. I took those, the round handles. That makes it, kind of kit bash. But you're trying to make sure that it looks like it performs a task. Now here it is before any paint. So there's where you can see where I'm taking some of the components, like the gray colored stuff. That would be kit bash stuff on the right hand side, and then the white is all just plain styrene. And I would encourage you to put as much detail as you possibly can. This one, for example, I'm putting all this goobly goop on it, right? And you're not really sure what it's doing, but I do finally light it and all this kind of stuff. But the environment kind of dictates, this thing, there's tanks on it and stuff like that. Here's with some paint on it. All of a sudden, it looks a little bit more realistic, when we get that paint on there. And then finally, I don't know if I have a picture right away. There's one of my bins while I'm building. But here's another one that it's got some tanks. Look, I've got some gauges in there right in the middle of the picture. You can see those gauges. Those gauges are off of a World War II model. So just use those, and they're great gauges. I think they're upside down, which makes them look pegged out, which is kind of fun. And then here's the scene. So this is what I meant by building things that kind of they shouldn't look all the same, but the similarity from one thing and the recognizability of something allows the other things that maybe don't have as much recognition. You're not 100% sure exactly what it is. The environment that you're building and the environment that you're putting them in kind of, forces people to think, oh, okay, yeah, that's a legitimate thing. Because like that last thing we saw, there was so much on it. It's like, what does that one do? Well, everything else around it, I think, helps make that illusion real because the other stuff is pretty apparent what it does. Here is some of those things now as I started to paint them. And one of the things that I like to do is I try to find primary colors for things, like for a room or something. Here's another one of those machines, but when I start painting this stuff, making it look like, if you look like this, that is the tan part right in the middle. That before it gets painted is clearly the grill off or a vent or a cover plate from a military vehicle. But as soon as I get some paint on it, it kind of looks like an input, like almost like a where you're typing stuff in. So it all helps. Here there is actually a keyboard on that one. And then here is what the picture I was actually looking for. This is when I started painting them all this similar color. And this is an off-white, almost an eggshell white. But I thought that lended to the medical look and color of stuff. This is a power thing. But there you can see where there's that off-white color. I'm trying to get more pictures of that. There's some more of them. Here we go. These aren't finished painting, but like those bright colors also make stuff, jump right out. And then there I think is a nice example of using that one singular color and then making it look very scientific, medical, that kind of thing by just having that stuff in there. Okay, so I need to take a break real quick and say hello to some folks because there's a whole bunch of folks in here and I really appreciate you coming in and I'd like to say hi. So let me do this. So I have, and I'm sorry, you're going to look at my ear, but I have Stephen is here and we said hello to Stephen earlier. And Scott, thanks very much for Scott for coming in. And Will is here. Thanks very much, Will and Scott and Stephen for coming in. Bob is here. Thanks very much for coming in, Bob. I really appreciate it. Uh, there we go. I try to show these, as I read them and say hello. I really appreciate you coming in. I love the scratch built too. The scratch built aspect of doing this, I think, is really something that I enjoy most because it is that challenge of trying to make something look like something. And when you start examining things at the part level, imagining each of these things is not, hey, that's a neat gadget or this did it. You try to more think of it as what does that individual part do on the larger thing that I'm doing. Oh man, I just dropped one part that I'll probably need someday. But anyway, thanks very much, Bob, and I'm glad to see you. Bob is my coaching student, and we have a great time together. I'm also working on some stuff for Bob that I'll show later, not today, but probably this weekend, because we have another long form video dropping at midnight tonight, and it is about the tools that are used in the stone carving that I did with Bob in our coaching class. And so that's another full length video coming up tomorrow. I'm sorry, Randy. Hey, Bill, you inspire. Thanks very much, Randy. I really, really appreciate that. And then Bob says, that is one of your top quality. I'm using your talent improved. Thanks very much. And I think it's neat because when I sometimes hear something told in a certain way, it just makes it much more understandable. I had a really tough time in school, and I'm 62 this year, so it was a long time ago. But I had a really tough time in school with math. It just didn't make sense to me because I'm such a visual person. Math today doesn't quite make sense to me. When I add, when I subtract, when I multiply, when I'm doing percentages and stuff like that, I literally have to take something and visualize in my brain a scale. Like if I want to see what's 60% of 245, I see a timeline of 245 in my brain, and then I look at 60% of it, and then I try to figure out what it is. And I have to rough guess, and I can't nail it, but I can get pretty darn close. I'm not going to do it now because then somebody will go, "Da, da, da, you're absolutely wrong." But anyway, that's kind of how my brain works, right? Many, many, many years later, somebody explained to me, well, I saw it online, what pi is. 3.1416, all that. And I totally got it. And I totally understood pi. When all through my life, I didn't understand pi. I knew what 3.14, the abbreviated version, was, and I basically knew why pi was important, and I knew it was used in formulas, but because my brain doesn't necessarily work with numbers very well, I couldn't understand what pi was and meant until I got that explanation. And so that's what I think I like to try and do. I think if you're watching my channel, then we have some of those similarities. I'm not saying that you're bad at math. I'm saying that you also have the capacity for seeing things, imagining things, have a creativity that sometimes just explodes out of you and you're just like, yeah, I gotta make something, So, because I'm like that. That's why the shop is like this. I have to just make something. So when I'm trying to explain things and stuff that I've figured out, that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming from. I'm trying to explain to folks that I work with and on my live streams how I see stuff and how I figured it out and why I find something that maybe some other people find difficult. I find it easy. And that's the stuff that I'm trying to teach, and that's the stuff that I'm trying to coach and talk about on my channel. I think that's really important because it is those little epiphanies, those little moments, those little seconds of understanding that sometimes just literally blow open doors. And that's not hyperbole. That's the truth. When I saw, and I say this a lot, but when I saw Andy's hobby headquarters, when I saw him use Mod Podge and sanded grout, that one thing, there were many other examples and things that came after that, but that one thing opened up dioramas for me. It opened up the excitement. It opened up the ideas that I had just bound in my head because I couldn't get past this one point of understanding the terrain. I couldn't get something that looked like dirt. I couldn't get something that in my mind I could build on top of and say, that's done. Now on to the next point. Because if I can't get that initial thing, it's not like I can come back to it. You can't build part of your foundation for your house and go, well, let's go ahead and start framing. It's probably not going to work very well. So I was stuck right at that bit. I just could not move forward. And I tried 3 and 4 times to build dioramas. And they just came out horribly. I saw that one video from Andy's Hobby Headquarters. Just opened it all up. And it didn't teach me everything that I needed to know. It allowed me to get past that first step and then take the next and the next and the next. And that's, I know I go off on tangents like this, but I get really excited about it. I almost knocked over my roll over here. I got a paper towel roll down here. So sorry about that. But let's get back to saying hi to folks. And I really want to get back to this because we're going to build this thing that I'm going to show you here in just a minute. So thanks very much, Bob. Go for It Painting is here. Hello, Daniel. And Daniel, gosh darn it, thank you so much for your email and the videos that you sent. And because you're getting ready for your show, you're not going to be posting so much, but I really want to get people to look at your channel because you have some great videos taken of shows around your area and the Monson show and all that. So if you haven't seen Go For It Painting, please go look them up. It's Daniel's site, and it's great because he goes to all these great shows and he does his own modeling. So please go look at Go For It Painting's site. And then Bob says, you're the one I have scratch built in 3D print. I'm not 100% sure what that is, Bob, but you're the one I have scratch built in 3D print. Well, I do both. If you could clarify that, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that one, Bob. Scott says, Cut Transform Glue is a channel on YouTube that comes on Sunday morning, and he takes printers, typewriters, hard drives, pretty much everything apart and builds models out of those parts. That's awesome. The thing is when you kind of get the idea in your mind as to where you want to go, and you're searching through this little box of parts, just like Scott's showing or talking about here. And we want to Cut Transform Glue. Please look that up. I'm going to look it up after the thing. But you're building that kind of stuff, and then you're looking through this box, and you come across a part, and it's like, well, that looks just like what I want. It's not a lot of times, that's not, no. A lot of times it's, man, that's exactly what I want, So that's really neat. Now, there are times where you're like, well, we're going to make this kind of look like something else. Totally fine. Not a problem. But you still want to keep around the point of making it look like it does something, right? It produces something, it's monitoring something, it's pumping something, it's outputting something, it's taking something in, it's moving something, it's powering something, Keep those things in mind, and that's going to make it a lot better in trying to do it. First Last is here. Hello, thanks very much, First Last. If it weren't for scratch building and people like you who have a keen creative sense for objects, we wouldn't have Star Wars vehicles made from tank tracks and Formula One fenders. Isn't that the truth? Thank you so much. That's really, really cool. And that is one of the things that surprised me as a kid. I cannot remember the magazine, but growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was a couple. Fangoria, I remember, because it was a very sensational cover on the magazine. But Fangoria had a lot of like the, people doing makeup and hands and faces. And I remember, masks were a big thing at the time in the 80s, all the great movie stuff. But also they would have stuff on Star Trek and Star Wars and how people built stuff. And I'd never heard of kit bashing before. I had built models since very young with my brother, which is very cool because my brother visited yesterday. I didn't get a picture in here of him and me, but my brother, see, here's a tangent, but I have to jump into this. My brother, my older brother, lives in Texas. He and his best friend rode motorcycles all the way up here, and they're doing this massive loop. They're driving from Texas to the Canadian border and then back down to Texas. Big, massive loop, 6,800 miles. They're big motorcycle riders. And he was here yesterday in the shop, and I haven't seen him since before COVID. So it was really, really awesome. So anyway, I'm sorry. I was talking about Fangoria and these magazines, but I had never known when building models with my brother that people did this until I saw those magazines. Now consider this. Star Wars came out when I was it was like the summer before junior high, which for us is 7th grade. So out of 6th grade, that's where, middle school, or not middle school, but elementary ends when I was in school. And then that was a huge transitional thing. And then Star Wars comes out. And then I get into all these, scratch built, the Millennium Falcon, that whole back band was just completely put on there. And they would show this stuff and they would show those people, but I was not really reading into it. They would talk about it and they would say stuff, and I would read it, but I wasn't learning anything from that, right? I wasn't getting ideas from that. But I thought it was neat that they scratch built stuff because I continued to build my X-Wings and of course I love Battlestar, so I did the Klingon, or not the Klingon ship, but the what are the guys in Battlestar? The big knight guys. I did their ship, the roundish kind of ship. I always liked that kind of stuff, but I never really kit bashed. Then when I got back into it, then I started. And man, I gotta tell you, it's so much better because there was always things in building models that when you were done with that model, you were done with that little adventure, right? That's why I like displays. That's why I love dioramas. That's why I really like to come up with something and take it beyond, because when you start building that model, it sparks that idea. It sparks that, wow, how it was used, or what could I do with this? Or if I had one of these, I would do that, or whatever. By building stuff around it, by putting it in a place, by giving it, background and depth, it just kind of rounds out the story. So anyway, I'm just waxing at this point. I need to say hello to everybody and thank you so much. First, last, I really, really appreciate that. Bob, he said, sorry, old man. Okay, I get it. I get gusts of old man all the time. So, Bob, I'm trying to say you scratch build that is looking as 3D. Oh, thanks very much. That's very, very cool. And, this is something that's really funny. There's an amazing builder locally. His name is Mr. Steve Hilby. And he is part of IPMS Seattle. He goes to Wonderfest each year. And when he goes to Wonderfest, now Wonderfest, if you're not aware, Wonderfest is where they have like the top in the world, because people come from outside the US as well, but the top science fiction kind of builders in the world. Steve's one of them. And I've told this story before, but when I first met Steve and started seeing his stuff, I was like, I didn't know how to express it. I said, it looks so professional. It looks so manufactured. And I think that's kind of what Bob's saying too, is that it looks like it was manufactured. And when I said that to Steve, he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know, but it just looks so perfect, you know." And while I don't think my stuff looks perfect, thank you very much, Bob. That is, of course, what I want it to look like. I want it to look like it's actually you could fire this thing up and do something. Or if you were at 1/35th scale, you could stand there and run this machine. You know, there's got to be handles. There's got to be knobs. There's got to be viewports. There's got to be levers. I think of all that kind of stuff, and that what is what makes it fun. Okay. Will says, Cylons, thank you so much, Will. And I can't even express what it's like getting a little older and something, you can see it and you're like, word, But that's just, a good burst of humility for me. And Scott knew it too, Cylons. Man, I really love BSG, Battlestar Galactica, and I like the new one too. It did some other things later on where I was like maybe not into it, but I really really liked Edward James Olmos and Katie Sackhoff, and gosh, freaking love Battlestar Galactica. So let's get to building. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this as we're building. I'm going to go over here, and I want to go through these because I think we've got pretty much all our pictures that I was going to show. Yes. So we just went through these, and I just wanted to give you an idea as what we build. But now let's do some buildifying. I have to turn on my camera. Sorry about that. It's going to kick on in just a second. And so I'm going to start like I do pretty much anything. I like to start with the biggest part. I want to kind of basically create a block or a big shape that I can add things to. And what I'm building for, what I'm trying to basically solve, if you will, is I have scaffolding in my, here, I guess I can go back to this camera and we can see it. I have scaffolding in here that I built this week. And I'm waiting to show you this, but I did put upper floors on here and here. We can look at that next week or maybe in some shorts. But as I'm putting some of these components, like I built that I showed you for my Wolfenstein, I need power to them. So this is going to be a practical application of moving actual power that I'm going to use for lighting and LED within these components and for these floors. I need to move power up the back of the structure here, okay, and deliver power to these floors as well as to lights above. Well, instead of just making it, trying to hide it, I'm going to exemplify it. I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna make it very viewable, and that's what we're gonna build today. So I'm gonna try and build basically a small junction box. It won't be everything that we need, but it's just going to be a specific junction box where things come into it and distribute power out. So this looks a lot like a Humvee hood. That's, I think, exactly what it is. And while it's pretty recognizable to folks, let me see if I can get a little tighter here. While it's pretty recognizable to folks doing that kind of modeling and stuff, it may not be to other people. And so I do trust in that a little bit. But the other thing that I do quite a bit of is I'll cut stuff off. Now, when I'm trying to cut stuff, if I'm thinking I'll just knock this off, well, why don't I just knock one side of it off, and then I can block that off, and then I've only got that, and that makes it a little bit off. I like that. Not having everything even kind of distinguishes it. Now, I could cut this a lot of ways, but I'm just gonna score it, and I'm being pretty careful. I'm not going too heavy, because scoring multiple times is really a lot better than trying to actually cut through. So I just score it, and there we go. I like to use, this is a 100 grit. It's like a medium 100 grit. That's a great way to clean up an edge. And I don't want to polish any of these edges that I'm going to be gluing to. I don't want to do that because a rough edge is going to it's going to stick much better because it'll melt the glue or it'll melt the plastic. You know, using your glue a lot better. Okay, so that I don't know if it's going to be the front or back yet, but I love the venting on it, and I think that is going to make a nice side piece. At any point, I may go and grab some styrene because a lot of times when I'm building, I'll do, you know, a part of this and maybe something like that, or I could put this on here. This is something that I think that's going to have to be part of it. So when I find kind of the direction I'm going, then I'll just kind of keep moving in that, and where I have maybe breaks or something like that, I can come in with styrene to fill that area. I've got to use this somehow because that's just a cool looking thing, and that's what I'm doing is I'm literally looking for something that looks cool. And this could go upside down or right side up, I guess. I'm trying to figure out on the side. I don't like this. It's got some numbers. I can fill that in easy enough, but I do like that. So when I find something, I will glue it. Now, on these are cast parts. This is your regular styrene type plastic. I can't, I have to use, you know, super glue. And when I'm doing this kind of stuff, I'm typically using the medium gap filling. If this is going to be on the bottom, I want to use something to index it. There we go. And by indexing, what I mean is I want those to be flush, those bottom two pieces to be flush. And by setting them on something, that's going to make sure they're even. If I try to eyeball it, lots of times there's things that you may not notice that are going to make it not flush like that, like you want. Okay, so that's great. That's the first part. What else do we got here? That's about the right size. And the other thing I got to think of is I have to put myself in front of this in 35th scale. So lots of times I have a figure, and of course this time I don't, but in one of my little boxes, I've got a figure, and I don't have to have exactly the figure I want. I want that figure because he's standing. He might be a little tall, but I want to make sure that the machinery is going to be, you know, correct for the person that's going to be in front of it. So I think that's nice. That's like a big, huge thing. It's going to take up a big part of the wall. I think next, I pulled this out earlier. This is nice. This is like the inside of a tracked vehicle or something like that. I think that might be nice up here. Yeah, I like that. So this, I'll probably just use my regular glue. And this is something that's really fun. I saw Kit Harrington use this. He's a local guy in the local modeling groups, and he uses this. And this is like like an alcohol dispenser, and you can put your glue in there, and then use just a brush like this for your model glue. Now, speaking of model glue, I don't use standard model glues like Tamiya model glues anymore. I mean, I have them and I can, like when I go somewhere, but this is actually MEK. And or MEK substitute or methyl ethyl ketone. And it works just as well as glue, as the super thin glue for your plastic models. It may not be available in your state in the US or possibly even overseas because of some regulatory stuff. So I don't know. It is available in Washington State, and it works great for plastic glue. Also, I think Kit said, the person that gave me the idea and gave me this, I think Weldon 4, it's a plastic adhesive. Weldon 4 is the one that he said to use, which is probably the same chemical. Okay, so there you go. See, and that's on there pretty good. I didn't glue it to that, but that's on there pretty good. So now you remember I said I had these little guys, and this is when it gets really fun. This is where I go picking through this box, because this box, I'm going to try to get it in the frame a little bit better. This box has all the teeny tiny stuff. I'll put it up top frame and then there. How's that? This has all the teeny tiny stuff that really makes a big difference. I mean, it's remarkable to think how big of a difference this stuff will make. This right here, it looks like, well, that's not complete. This looks like a nice part. That looks just like something that I can have on there defining a certain area. And so I'll just see these openings, the hood openings. I'm just going to take that and put it there. And that helps define that area like a guard or something around it. This is what's nice about this glue, because you're putting it on with a paintbrush. So it's very, very easy to not disturb your part. A lot of times when I'm trying to use the stiff paintbrushes that come in your Tamiya, I'll move my little part that I'm trying to do. Now, the other thing is I don't have to have exactly the same part as that, but if I do, I'll typically find them ahead of time before I glue something in. But I think my chances are pretty good I'll find a secondary part. A lot of the parts that you get as you know, spares and things like that in your box are going to be in dual or duplicate. A lot of times they'll be mirrored because you use a lot of these things from vehicles, of course, on both sides of the vehicle. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not going to concentrate on that, though. I'm just looking for cool looking parts. This one, this is like, I think it's a flap that is used on a door for something, because I see it a lot. It's like maybe a cover for a little firing spider hole or something like that. But what I like to use it for is like a gauge. See this? It's that kind of a triangular with a rocker bottom. It's round on the bottom. Well, I'll take these, clean that up, and that'll be a protector for a throw switch. So if I put this here next to that place, I'm going to put it so it's facing up, and that will be a side protector for a throw switch, and then I can find a throw switch and stick out of there, and it'll show the movement going up and down. So I have not checked messages, and nope, that's not our throw switch. That's that one I found before. I want something a little like this. I like that. Sticking a piece of styrene, just, you know, a long bit of it, looks good for like a big switch, a big throw switch you're going to throw. But putting something with a base on it like this has looks better. So that's what I want. And I want to kind of put that base in there in such a way that you can see that base. I don't want it hidden. The length of this may change, certainly, when I complete it. But by having that little base visible in there, that's just going to be a detail that's going to add to it. While that is gluing, this is a little track guard for a Mark V tank, and because it's got bolts on it, it works great to give not just a little, but a heck of a lot of character to something. Just putting that in there. Now, what I haven't determined yet is what this does. I don't like that there. Remember I said it's got to do something. It's got to physically look like it performs a task. And I haven't quite figured that out yet. It doesn't mean that I know going in what it does, but my goal is to go toward making it look like it's doing something. So I have to kind of keep that in my mind. And like I said before, one of the ways of doing that is finding or showing that it's moving some material, or it has inputs and outputs. This is a neat little part. And of course your parts are all going to differ, but one of the things that I think is great is sometimes you can go to swap meets and you can buy, and it doesn't, frankly, it doesn't matter the part or the model, but you can buy old models in bulk. And that's what I've done. I've gone to some of the IPMS events. People have given me models, all manner of things. And that's where you find these parts. This I really like because it's got 3 holes in it. It's got a pattern to it. I'm going to have that as inputting and outputting something, so I can have hoses go into that. So I'm going to place this. I think that'll be a nice place. I'm going to place that there. I'm not worried too much well, I can trim this off. But this will give me a place to put one of my other favorite things, which is lead wire. So I was looking for a way to put cables and hoses at scale on the things that I'm building. And I always got frustrated because, like, if you use solder has a pretty good property of not bouncing back. And I'm going to get another piece of wire here and show you what I'm talking about while that dries. So that's the other thing that I keep around a lot is wire. And so I've got this box that's just full of wire. But the problem with wire is, this is a nice piece of copper wire, but when you bend it, it kind of bends back, right? It doesn't stay there. And when I'm trying to route something or have a wire go somewhere, I really want it to stay where it's at. So in comes lead wire. So this is lead wire. You can buy it online. I got this on Amazon, and it came in a box, and there's 3 rolls here, and they are 1 millimeter, 0.8, and 0.5 millimeter. And there's 2 of each of these. So you get 6 rolls, 2 5 mil, 2 0.8 mil, and 2 1 mil. And then you can use those. This is the thickest stuff. But look at what happens here when you move this. Yes, it's better to wash your hands and use gloves. No exposure to the lead is good, is what they tell you. But if you move that, there is 0 spring back. Did everybody see that? I'm going to put some white behind it so you can see real quick. But when you move this, whoops, I got to hold it real steady. When you move it, there's 0 spring back. And that's exactly what I need. I need something that's pliable enough that I can move and I can route and I can work with to get it to do what I want to do in my model. So in this little part that I have here, I don't have to really go anywhere with this. I can just take these coming out of one and put it in the other. So I will throw a little glue in here. As a matter of fact, I will have it go somewhere. I'm going to have it come up here. I am going to have this start here, and I'll use a little accelerator to get it to set. So now it's set up, are you? My accelerator's getting old. And yes, your accelerator can get old. If you leave the cap off your accelerator like I do, it can weaken. I did not know that, but now I do. So I'm telling you. So that's in there now. Now, yeah, I could just go up, over, and in. But on components, you'll notice that they a lot of times will route the hoses and the wiring in a very, very specific way. That's another thing that I try to do in my dioramas. I try to, sorry, I had to get another set of clippers. I try to make sure that it looks like, you know, I'm routing it. This is not just that this goes from one place to another. This has a specific purpose. And to make that more of a point, as I add another component, I can add it so that this is actually routing around that component. You know, so there you go. I've got a throw lever here. I've got some hoses there. I'm going to put another hose that's coming out the bottom, and it's just going to kind of go off to the side here. I can pre-bend it certainly. When you're bending them, when you're bending your stuff, let's look at if hopefully I can get a good picture of this. When you're bending it, don't just bend it. Bend it flat. And what I mean is this: I'm bending it, and then on the second bend, it's flat again. So it's making sharp angles. Okay, you'll notice that a lot on high-end machinery. And what I mean by high-end machinery, medical machinery, that kind of thing. They really take their time. If you look at like a jet engine in the military, you know, that kind of stuff, they are not mucking around. They are taking their time. They're bending those things in a very specific pattern to get out of it what they want. So there we go. And some accelerator. Now this thing I think really needs an input and an output, some dials and stuff like that. Here is an old radio, 1/35th scale radio. I could take part of that. This is also two parts, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to split it. So I think I will do that. I'm going to use this. I'm just going to find the seam and take this apart because I don't want all that bulk. And there we go. If I want, take a little sandpaper. I've always got sandpaper around because of, you know, woodworking. But having a whole piece of sandpaper flat is a lot better to flatten something than trying to do it on one of those spongy boards like this. You're not going to get flat. You're going to get round. So now I think this looks good, that I can have it maybe here or maybe up here. So we need to go and get our check from our standing guy. So if he's here and there, you know, I've got to think about where he's going to access something. And what I'm thinking is that right there, the face of that, I could take this off of here, and that face could be the control panel. That's the other thing. Most machines are going to have controls, but they're also going to have a control panel, a main access point where you turn it on, you turn it off. You have certain adjustments. If it's computerized, it's going to have a computer screen. Now, you know, I'm doing stuff in World War II. Godzilla is in the 50s, of course. So I can have some rudimentary kind of computer screens, and that'll be just fine. I think somewhere along the line, I'm looking for something here to cut. There we go. Somewhere along the line, I think I would like to have a reel-to-reel, because that was very prominent in the 50s and the 60s. You'd see like this reel-to-reel tape running somewhere. So there, I've got a little control panel. I'm going to glue that on there in a way that it looks correct. I think I got to do a little bit more mod. I got to take this off. You do a lot of modifications, but you know, that's just part of it. And I think you get a good idea as to how to work with stuff because you're doing these mods. That fits on there real nice now. go back to my glue. I asked some folks a while back, do you glue over your paint? And they said yes, they do. So now I do too. So you can see this part up here has been painted, but this glue will melt right through your like your Tamiya paint and stuff like that. So there I've got a little control panel and it sticks proud, which I like. I think that's neat. I think I still need maybe some more. I think I need an input. I need some way of changing some dials or something like that. One of the other things, and I didn't bring it over here, darn it, is a hole punch where you have like a leather hole punch. I use it constantly, and here's the evidence of it. Those little leather hole punches work wonderfully on styrene. So I'll just punch a whole bunch of these. And I didn't bring it over here, but I have a place, a little tray, you know, one of these a little bit smaller. And it's just full of these things, different sizes. And they work great to put knobs on because just putting a little circle or something like that is great. A lot of people do punches. You know, you've got all kinds of things that you can do. Here is a nice little part that I like. That looks like a knob. I'm going to put that adjustment knob right on there. And it's got a couple of legs on the back. So it will stand proud and that'll look great there. So one of the things that I also like to do is I like to make things, and I showed a couple of them in the examples that you saw, that you can get on. A lot of industrial equipment will have things where you can climb up on them. Walkways, catwalks, special steps to reach something. And so that's something that you can add as well to try to get a little bit of realism. The other thing is because you're in an industrial environment, a lot of them have guards or they have protective bars that stick out to keep things from running into it. And that's what I'm putting in here. I got to trim this though a little bit. It's a little bit long. So that's one of the things that I think about too. And you'll see that repetitively done, you know, on tanks and vehicles and stuff like that, but it also on industrial equipment, which is what I'm going for here. You know, in the Hand of Godzilla, what they're doing is they are either examining to re-engineer something or whatever of Godzilla's hand. But the point is that hand is going to have a lot of scientific and medical equipment attached to it, monitoring it and trying to, you know, maybe take readings or whatever. It may also be providing him nutrients. There may be some points where I've got like an IV going into his arm. So this is just trying to make sure I've got stuff that looks like moves that kind of, like maybe it's moving plasma or some whatever, you know, exotic liquid or something like that. So this could be a massive pump. That's why these clear things on either side I think are really a neat idea. So I'm having to hold this a little bit to get it. There we go. I think that'll work. It's not wanting to stay. There's just not a lot of room for it to glue. I might have to prop that up with something. Okay, let's look for some more parts. So I am wondering if anybody, oh, this is a great part. If anybody has any questions about scratch building or kit bashing or what kinds of things you're looking to accomplish with, you know, building your own parts. You know, do you think it's important to build your own parts and stuff like that? I know, but I'd like to hear from folks that are watching. And I'm gonna, as soon as I set this, I'm gonna get some glue on it. I am going to come over and look at comments and see if anybody has anything to say. I've not been paying attention. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, let's see if there's any comments. Okay. Car Models Craft says, what will it be? Well, that's a really good point. What will it be? Because again, that's the first thing you ask yourself. What's it do? What's it gonna be? Well, I think what this is going to be is something that's pumping liquid. And again, I'm gonna move this up so you can see it a little bit better. I want to get it close enough and get this so you can see a little bit better. There we go. So this is going to be in the diorama. He'll be like standing in front of it, or a different figure. This is not working very well at all, is it? There you go. He'll be standing in front of it. And this will then represent a control panel of something that is either pumping or reading, trying to determine what his plasma levels are. I don't know. That's the thing. It has to do something though. So that's what this one is supposed to look like. I still want some kind of input. I still want something added down here. And as you saw in the pictures, once it gets closer to what you want, it's going to look a lot, or you do that one paint over it, it's going to look a lot more homogeneous. It's going to look like a thing at that point, and you'll have better ideas of what it's going to look like. If you want to do a scratch build of a specific thing, I mean, that works. I try to not do that. What I'm going to try to do here is drill into this tank and then have some hose come out of it. I don't necessarily want to build something that actually is, and it depends on the type of diorama you're doing, of course. But the reason for me is I don't want someone to say, well, that wouldn't be like that. Because I was that guy. I was, when we were in the military, we'd go see like a Rambo movie. They were very popular and they were fun to go see. But you're like, wait a minute, that only has 9 rounds, or you can't do that with that. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to be that. And the reason is not to be inauthentic or anything like that. It's because I don't want to spoil the illusion. In diorama building, man, look at that part. That's like part of an engine block, but look at that. I think that goes right there. That's perfect. Anyway, you don't want to spoil the illusion. When you're presenting your diorama, and especially something like this, where it's, sci-fi-ish and stuff like that, you build this idea or this illusion that this is going to do something, or this is the kind of thing you're going to see. And then if you give them something that kind of spoils that, which kind of kills that illusion, then it can have a really distinct effect on the rest of the diorama. It can make them not believe other parts of it that you're hoping that they can maybe suspend their belief and say, hey, yeah, that does look like that, or it can do that. You know what I mean? You don't want to create disparaging visuals in your diorama. You want to try to make everything support the other thing. And again, that doesn't mean that it has to look exact. It has to look like it's supposed to do what you want it to do, but it doesn't have to look like exactly like something. Because again, if it doesn't look exactly like something it's supposed to look like, that can spoil your image. Okay, so there's nice. I've got just a hose that's going to go back and connect into here. And this is still really Nothing's really cured here. So these things are bending and moving as I'm working with them because I haven't filled in the structure back here. What I'm trying to do, as I said before, is kind of get the big stuff in. And then once it's done, then I can put it up against like the wall as it'll be mounted. And then I can fill in these areas with styrene and different pieces to make it look like it's, a fully built up piece of a machine, I don't want it too big, because it'll take up too much size or too much area in the diorama. So I do want to be careful that it's not this monstrous thing, which is frankly easy to do when you're building. You get into something and it's kind of sometimes hard to stop building, and so you gotta stop, take a look at it, step back, and then dive back in. Boy, that looks pretty cool. I think I'm going to work on fitting this to the front because I think that really, adds a lot to it. And it does look like an engine block. Maybe I need to put it upside down so the engine block part, yeah, that's better. The engine block part is down. We'll see. Maybe sideways. I don't want it to look like an engine block. And I think if we have it sideways like that, it won't necessarily, especially if I have some other things affixed and coming in. It's going to mess with this, so I'm going to put this guy out, but I think that can go right there nicely. Or like that. I don't know. I think that looks better. Okay, we're going to glue that in. Now I can create, you know, gaps and all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm not too worried about it. Machinery has that, you know. If it's blatant and it's not gonna support what you've already done, then yeah, then you don't want to do it. But I think that you've got enough freedom, especially in a sci-fi world, to make this stuff. But even in, trying to be realistic, I've seen machinery from the past work that I used to do, that you would be just like, man, is that real? So you kind of can't go wrong with this as long as you add things that make it look like it physically performs some task. And again, you don't actually have to have what that task is. All right, I am going to look for some add-ons here. That's a great looking add-on. I'm going to check for some messages here. The Affronted is here and says, having the engine on the side looks really cool. I agree. I liked it on the side, but the problem was I think it kind of pushed into other stuff. Now, what do you think of that? I think that looks pretty good with it. It's like right up on top, but with this stuff and the lever, I think it looks okay. So I think that's what we're gonna do. And then Hepe is here. Hello, Hepe. Scratch building for me opens up so many possibilities to create a unique story, and it's much more creative process too. I agree. It really is creative, and it really is an enjoyable thing. He continues, and it's fun when you build something blindly and just watch it slowly take shape, often turning it into something completely different from when you first imagined. Very good point. And very true, because it can really take on a life of its own. Sometimes you have to throttle yourself back. You don't want to go too far in a certain direction, because it could kind of lose what you're trying to accomplish. But as long as you just kind of take your time and every once in a while, look back on stuff. See, no, I don't think that's going to help me with what I want. That's not what I want. That's a great looking part. A lot of times I just get these amazing looking parts and I'm like, wow, that just looks great. So I'm going to do that with this one. That's just a fine looking part there. I still have to do some stuff over here. But is that going to be right there? That's right. And there's a big hole there, so it's for the headlight. I think that big hole is going to be a great opportunity for a large hose of some type. So I think that'll look really great right there. Okay. What else do we have here? Oh, look at that. That's like an exhaust. Now I like that because that's a big hose that I could have that's like an output. You know, it's moving something to somewhere else. We'll see about using that. I like that one. I also like to bring in other things. It doesn't have to be something, you know, styrene. One of the things that I like to do is using value gear. So this is a little value gear. It has a little bundle on top of it, and it has a crate. I wouldn't add that to this, but he's got toolboxes that somebody could certainly set, you know, after your your machine is built, somebody could set a toolbox on it. So that kind of thing is nice. You know, to have something setting on it, a cup of coffee, a glass of water, a tool that's just sitting there, completely fine. And I think adds a lot to it. Okay, so I have been trying to cover up these letters for an awful long time, and I think I just found the right thing to do it with. So that is going to go to cover up some letters. One of the things that I find myself doing a fair amount of times is not cleaning my parts so there are seams on them. If they become apparent later on, you know, in the process, I will take them off. But and if it's like a really crazy seam or something like that, then yes, I'll take it off. But when I'm doing this, yeah, I'll even leave the seams on them because it may not be seen once it's done. That looks pretty good. Okay, I've got to cover these up here something. Look at that toolbox, just like my example. You'd think I'd know what that was coming up with. These are great. Oh, that's fantastic. Here is a little knob. That is going to work out great. That will go. I got to clean off the little tip here. But that will be a nice switch that can be turned. It's a little cattywampus. I got to move that. It wasn't lined up right. Yeah, lining up with those straight edges on your model is very important. Your eye can pick that up very far away. And so if you do have something like that, remember you do need it to line up properly against another straight edge. Okay, that's a great part to put right there. Looks like a little vent. It's got some crosshatch in there. Okay, any more questions? And the reason I ask is we're just about over an hour, and I try to keep these to about an hour, and I'd love to talk some more. And don't worry, this is not just an example that I'm going to throw away. This is actually going into the diorama. I will be putting this in. Now, what I was first working on was it was going to be a junction box, and it was going to be where power comes in and power goes out. It was going to be very, very plain. Well, it is no longer a junction box. So this is just like what Hepe was saying. It's just completely different than what I was thinking it was going to be at first. I was going to do this power distribution box and stuff. So, you know, very pertinent question that I had. I got to scroll up here to see whose question that was. I'm sorry. It was Car Modelcraft said, what will it be? Well, what we were starting to do, Car Modelcraft, was I was going to have a junction box, just power in, power out. But just as soon as I started, I found stuff that I really liked, and I just really liked that hood. I really liked, I'll switch over real quick, these parts, these glass parts that I've got mounted on here, which I can paint to look like they have, liquid in and stuff like that. So I just fell in love with it, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's now going to be a piece of machinery that's going to go, in there. And it does look like big industrial machinery. It doesn't look like as much of a medical device. So there's certain things that I'll be building for this to do different things. Let's look behind me. Here, up here and stuff, this is where they're going to be doing like medical devices and stuff like that. And I can go here and show you here. Remember the medical devices, that kind of stuff. That's what we're building right now. That's what it's turning into instead of a junction box. But what I will need in here is more medical equipment here, some medical equipment here, but also some mechanical equipment, because I'm going to have either a drawbridge or something. I need something to walk in front of, but it's movable. I'm working on that. But down here, I'm going to have more things that like will have pistons and will move like, I was thinking of maybe something around the wrist that contracts and closes to clamp the wrist in place. The idea is, and this is something I talked about last week. I wasn't sure if, we've got this arm from this far up, that's what's in there in the middle, Godzilla's hand. Well, is his hand cut off? No, I don't want his hand cut off. It's basically, in some of the movies, they would work with Godzilla and they would sneak up on Godzilla. Well, in this scenario, for the story of this diorama, he's going to be passed out. He's going to be either drugged or passed out or knocked out, and they're trying to work on him and help him and whatever. And so he's going to be laying basically down. He'll be supine, and then his hand will be up in this room in this big facility, and they'll be working on it. Like I said, he may have like an IV or something going into his arm where they're like pumping, good fluids into him or something like that. To accomplish that, I would have to have something that holds his arm in place because he's knocked out, right? Well, that's what this bottom level is going to be. So this bottom level is going to have more mechanical machinery. Think of James Bond and all that kind of stuff where you've got this big, huge machines that do these big, huge things. Well, that's kind of what I want in the bottom. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about this machinery. There'll be medical machinery, there'll be some machinery, mechanical machinery, and then a mix between that, hydraulics and things like that. I just think that kind of thing is interesting. I like that kind of thing, and I think it'll be interesting for people to look at. And then how it ties into Godzilla, again, was there will be connections into the hand. The hand, by the way, as an update, is doing pretty darn good. It is just about dry. It has been now, tomorrow morning, because I think I did it on a Saturday morning. Tomorrow morning will be a week, a full 7 days for this to dry. And this is dry, and this is dry. And so the next part of it is doing another thick coat, so it's still going to be, a long drying process, but I wanted to see how long this would physically take to dry in the shop. I didn't put it in an oven. I didn't try to cook it. I have my drying cabinet behind me. I could have put it in there. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to see how long it takes. I needed that for my own edification. So this I need to do on the back. I got to do the back of his hand because it's got to look like the back of his hand. And, with the ridges for the tendons and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to have a fair amount of buildup. It's going to do the same kind of cracking as this. But by understanding the material, that's why I'm learning and testing to see how long it works. Because I've used this for years, but I'd never used it this thick. But on my not this last diorama, but the last diorama before that, I did notice a significant amount of shrinking, and that's so important to take care of prior to doing the final skin on the outside. That's hugely important. If I hadn't let this dry, and proceeded then to go on with the final skin coat. The skin coat isn't going to crack because it's thin enough. It'll be fine. It will shrink, but not crack. But this, if it continued to shrink under that coat, the whole thing would have been bungled up. And then I would have delams. I'd have all kinds of stuff going on. So it was really important to get to this step. And again, there's going to be more. Each of these fingers is going to be a heck of a lot thicker. This is Godzilla. He had really thick hands. And I am modeling specifically the early days of Godzilla, this kind of a hand, not the newer, because the newer is very different. The newer style is much more sleek, much more claw, much more. Somebody said alligator-like, and it was absolutely correct. It was alligator-like, and so that's the newer style. The older style still has that alligator-type skin, but it was a suit, and so it was very big and fat fingers, and they weren't supply, really nice and muscular. It was just fat, and I love it. They look cool, and so that's why I've done it in this way. So I will continue to work on that, and like I said, this weekend I'll put some stuff on there, and then I will continue to do some more of the building on the scaffolding and the machinery and things like that go in the scaffolding. Now, I'm just going to let that go. There's another thing that I want to talk about because there's some really fun stuff going on this weekend, as a matter of fact. So I am fortunate enough, I got to find it here. I am very fortunate to be asked to participate in a panel this Sunday. So June 1st, the Model Officers Mess on Facebook is, and I'm going to show you this here, is going to be he's going to be starting a new diorama. And it's a very significant diorama. So this is James Skiffins, and he's the model officer. And it starts on Sunday, and that's the start of his build of an Akagi build. And the Akagi, I need to actually read up more on it, but the Akagi was scuttled after being hit during the Midway exchange in World War II. And it's a real big story. And that's what I'm reading, and I'm finding out, and I've got a bunch of stuff off Wikipedia, and it's really fun to read about. Well, it's not fun because it was a tragic event, but it was a huge turning point in World War II. And so these events, I think, are great to read about and study about. Well, what we're doing Sunday is there's going to be a panel, and myself and multiple other people will be joining James Skiffins to talk about building a diorama, creating a story that keeps people engaged, what you do in a diorama. And so again, it's not going to be just myself, it's going to be other people on this panel. It starts at, boy, I better have this right. It is, I think it's 1 o'clock Mountain Time. Man. I will double check that, and I will actually put a short out to double check and make sure. I'm gonna look at something here because I'm sorry, I don't want to have this wrong, because I'm very excited about it, and James has really been working on making sure this is going to be a really neat event. It is 3 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm glad I double checked that. 3 p.m. Mountain Time Sunday, U.S. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Just make sure everybody got that. And again, a wonderful, neat. There's a new Akagi model out. James is going to be building it. There's going to be scratch build in there. There's a lot going on in this, and it also ties very personally to James Skiffins. And I'm going to let him tell that story and more about the project. But I'm humbled and very excited to be there with some other people to talk about this. and get this going. So it's going to be an open panel. He will be taking questions. We'll be taking questions and answering questions about diorama building and specifics to his Akagi build that kicks off this Sunday. So please join us. Please look for the model officer on Facebook, and you can get more information there. I also will have a link in the notes of this live stream. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Lastly, I do a lot of I don't do a lot of coaching. I've been doing a lot of it lately with Bob, and it's been brilliant. We built this. That was our first project that we did, and we're launching into another one now. And that one's similar to the other one. Is going to be filmed, and I'll be uploading that. But when I produce these videos for Bob, when I'm doing coaching, I upload them under the members section of the channel. So these are videos that I film while Bob and I are online. So you'll get some of that. And then I'll take that film, and then I'll also film here at the desk and produce more footage. And then I'll put these into these videos, and that's what gets uploaded to the members section. If you're a member, you can watch them. Totally fine. They will eventually be released. Not all of them. Some of them will be put into packaged like, hey, you want to build this? Here, it's $2. You can buy that, and here's a guide to build that. So that's part of my digital offering. But these are just for the members section until they get released. And speaking of that, for the last build that we did, which was the dry stack stone wall, that the second video in that series drops this evening at midnight, tomorrow morning at 01 a.m. That is going to be the tools and more explanation about how I do the texturing on foam walls and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoy that. That'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, I think that's about it. So let's go back and take a look and see if there's any other questions that I can answer. I would love to answer them if you have them. I just got to find where you're at. And I think we're doing pretty good. Got to run from Will. Hold on. Hepe says, and it's fun. Hepe says, do you ever use junk for building? For example, I sometimes use lids from soap dispensers or parts from chocolate packaging and stuff like that. Absolutely. Yes. And that's a fun part of building is when Mrs. Modelcraft now does this. She'll come up to me and say, hey, I was going to throw this away, but look, it's this plastic hoo-ha thing. And yes, you find those things because when you start building in scale and you get that in your mind, you see little objects differently. You know, the spool this comes off of becomes like a big wire spool from a construction site. You know, that kind of thing is very common. And yeah, I do use that all the time. So part of the stuff that's in here, not a lot, but part of it is that. If I find a cap or something like that, caps are, you know, you see a lot of that kind of thing. Absolutely wonderful to put in your diorama. So yeah, I love using that kind of stuff. Thank you very much, Hepe. I really appreciate that. And Will says, got to run. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much, Will. Have a great weekend yourself, sir. And I want to see more about your building, your haunted house. Scott, thank you so much for coming on, Scott. You're the best, sir. Scott is one of our longest watchers and followers, and really appreciate that, Scott. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And everybody, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. A lot of the people in the U.S. are just coming back, and this is their first weekend after having a long weekend and after having a holiday weekend. So now it's actually time to relax, because when you go on vacation on a holiday weekend, it's not relaxing. Now is the weekend you can relax. So you can take a step back. You're probably still cleaning camping equipment, but you can take a little bit more time this weekend, maybe even get to the bench. I hope you get a chance to. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow. I got another short for you tomorrow. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.